Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Thriving Together, Empowering Employees for Lasting Retention. My name is Michelle Eisenberg, and I am a program assistant at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the NASDAQ Center is a nonprofit building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. So, as you will see in the chat in a moment, the NASDAQ Center provides programs, resources, and exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So definitely make sure to check out those links and resources in the chat. And then just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First, let us know where you are dialing in from in the chat. We always love to connect. And second, we are going to open up for live Q&A at the end of the event. So please make sure to submit your questions for us in that Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation, and we will try our best to get to all of them. And of course, none of what we do could be possible at the center without all of the amazing support from our sponsors, including NASDAQ, Lehigh University, BMO, Airbnb, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodruff Sawyer, Microsoft Entrepreneurship for Positive Impact, BPM, and HubSpot for Startups. We are humbled by their contributions and hope you are grateful too. And so before we get started, we always like to launch a couple polls just to see how everyone is doing in the room today. So this first one is going to ask, how are you feeling? Fearful, anxious, surviving, or optimistic? And I'll give it just a few moments for people to submit a response here. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and end this poll. Share these results. All right, looks like optimism is in the lead, but surviving coming up close behind. Fear and anxiety, it looks like that's in the audience as well. So hopefully some of our conversation today will help address some of those feelings. And I'm going to stop sharing this poll and launch that second poll. What is keeping you up at night? Finance, sales, marketing, scale, pivot, team, or surviving? Now I'll give this one just a few more moments. Thank you, thank you. This one just tells us a little bit more about your current entrepreneurial needs so that we can continue to provide a meaningful programming to all of you. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and end this poll and share these results. All right, looks like team's in the lead, definitely fitting for our conversation today, but also see some finance and surviving close behind. So thank you for participating, and we'll take this into account for future programming. So I'm going to stop sharing that poll, and without any further delay, please join me in giving the warmest welcome to our two special guests, Jill Pappenheimer, partner of HR consulting at BPM, and Stacy Litteral, HR consulting and managing director of advisory at BPM. Stacy, Jill, it is so wonderful to have you both back with us today, and I'm just going to pass it right over to you.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate it. So we are here today. Thank you all for those who have joined us to talk about empowering employees for lasting retention. So we have a lot of meaty content to talk through that'll give you all kinds of ideas and thoughts for how to keep your team engaged and thriving. We have a fair amount of slides to go through, so we're going to go at a pretty good clip to get through it all. And we're starting with just a few introductory slides. I'm a partner at BPM. I lead our HR and People Services team, of which we are just under 30 strong, mid to senior level consultants that are here to support organizations from beginning to enterprise level in terms of tactical to strategic HR services. I've been doing HR my entire career, and it's been the only area I've ever been interested in. It's my passion. I love it. And I feel blessed to be doing work that has been the fit for me. throughout my career. And I'd like to introduce Stacy Litteral, who is managing director with the team and couldn't do it without her. Stacy, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Jill. So I have been in HR also the bulk of my career. I've had the pleasure of running a nonprofit organization. I've spent a good chunk of time in corporate, but always had my passion is around really the coming together of the people function and the C-suite, so that really the people function is considered heavily in the overall business strategy. So right now I'm leading our HR technology team and working on streamlining processes and really bringing those two worlds together, the business side and the people side. So also happy to be here. I love working with the NASDAQ Center team. So thrilled to be here.
Just briefly about BPM, if you don't know us, we are a CPA, tax advisory, and assurance firm, and founded in 1986. We have over 70 partners with the firm. I think we're at somewhere around, I don't even know, 1,200 plus employees at this point. And our three leading services, thank you, Stacy, is assurance, advisory, and tax. And Stacy and I fall under advisory, which, as you can see, there's a lot that we provide. Essentially, any aspect of an organization beyond running the organization, we can support at BPM. But our advisory team supports the HR services, the IT services, the finance services component, outsourced or managed services advisory, as well as we do a lot with ERP, NetSuite, Sage Intacct is significant within our advisory team, as well as managing M&As and helping with organizations that might be pre-IPO. So the list goes on, as you can see here. Our team specifically supports all of the aspects of HR. So we can be a complete outsource for organizations, or we can do project work. We can mentor HR people. We can support really from the payroll to building culture. And we're able to do that because our team have minimum 12 years of experience. To join our consulting team, you have to have that level of experience, typically at the director to VP level, and have done everything or be a specialty focused area specialist. So our specialty areas are recruitment or talent, compensation, where we do benchmarking, build salary, comp structures, executive comp, pay equity analysis, full gamut there. As Stacy mentioned, the HR systems side, we can optimize systems that are currently in place or help implement new ones and really look at workflows, appropriate approval levels to really get that HR function working seamlessly within organizations so that you're not leveraging HR more than you need to. We have a performance tool, which we'll just mention at the end here, which I think is very progressive and might be interesting for those of you in attendance. And lastly, I did want to mention we support payroll. We can be a complete outsource on the payroll side of things or advisory as well. So I jumped around there a little bit, but that's a little bit about who we are and what we do. In terms of today's agenda, we're going to talk a bit about how to clearly define employees' roles and responsibilities and how to make those sticky and ensure that ownership occurs. We're going to talk about what employees need and how to use analytics to support that information and help you support the organization as a whole, as well as the individuals. How to keep employees engaged and ensure that they have a sense of belonging, which is such a hot topic right now and so important. DEI is out there and is not going away. And we think the word belonging is a key component of that. So we'll talk about that a little bit as we go on. And then why employees leave and how to implement a feedback loop so that you can avoid that from occurring. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Stacy to jump into this first section.
Thank you, Jill. So we're going to kick off first with some workforce trends. What are we seeing in the space? Some of you in the audience here may be experiencing some of these, but these are just the hot topics we like to stay on top of and support our clients as we work through these kind of key trending issues. So Jill just mentioned diversity, DEIB is a big topic right now. Aging, worker scarcity, we know the talent pool has been a challenge, so we can address that a little bit. Along the same lines of skills-based talent strategies happening in a lot of discussions. Our recruitment team is working on this. Our comp team talks a lot about this. But being able to recruit and hire based off of skills versus experiences is a hot topic. The three items that have the arrows is where we'll spend some time today, although each one of these could be their own webinar, but prioritization of the holistic employee experience is where we're gonna start. The employee experience is kind of the new buzzword. It's the new employee engagement. It's kind of the older term. So the holistic employee experience is really where the industry leaders are talking now. People sustainability is also a hot topic. We will address that a little bit. New ways to lead. So those of you, many of you are entrepreneurs just starting out your business and really kind of adopting your own leadership style. So we've got some tips for you around what the younger or the emerging workforce is looking for in leaders. Pay and reward strategies, comp is a very hot topic right now. Growth, learning and development in the flow of work, also a hot topic. And then the importance of the recruiter. We will definitely talk about that a little bit, knowing that all of you are probably considering or have been considering hiring a recruiter or recruiting for open roles that you may have. This will be an interesting discussion. And then productivity and data analytics. So also areas where we serve clients and hot topics now. How do we use data to make smarter and more sustainable business decisions? So we're going to jump into this employee experience idea, and something I want to highlight here is the social aspect of work. We used to be separating our personal lives and our work lives. That really doesn't happen anymore. Now employees are looking to be a part of something that they connect to. Jill used the term belonging, a place where they belong. They want to know that the organization that they work for is in line with their own personal values, their own personal, their mission, where they want to go in life. And so as an employer, if you're looking to recruit and retain talent, being able to define your work strategy that leans into your culture, your vision, and you're able to communicate that is really, really important to job seekers. And then there are also people that are really looking for a very clear understanding of how do you measure success. So how, as an organization, are you going to define success, and what does it mean to be successful as a group and individually? And so we really encourage collaboration across functions, co-designing with employees, a lot of group discussions, and really defining that culture and then living out that culture together as a group. That's really, really important. And a lot of studies have shown that the younger workforce is really very interested in that. And then when you're thinking about your people processes, your workplace design, your DE&I approach, how you're using tech, to really think about it as a people as a whole. So there's a sample here from Heineken that they were able to define their 10 human right policy standards. And that was a really unique kind of first mover in the space to really put in writing in an employee handbook, what do they define as their human rights policy standards? And this goes above and beyond a typical code of conduct you would see in a handbook, but this is really like, these are the things that are important to us and we will support. And so you've seen, back in 2020 when the George Floyd issues were going on, that employers were deciding whether or not to put the blackout screen on their social media pages, or being able to actually call out as an organization, not just as an individual, how they feel about social policy issues. And we're seeing employers do that more and more. And that's really inviting prospective employees and current employees to align with those. And it's a very unique shift in the workplace. And so it's something that you definitely want to consider and be able to communicate to prospective and existing employees to create alignment. Being agile and continuously improving is something that I think we all, learned post-COVID, if not before, was that, you have to be able to be agile, you have to be able to shift in order to be able to improve. And so, so that kind of goes without saying. And then making long-term investments. This is what we recommend. Clients come to us and they say, where do we start? And we recommend making investments in programs or initiatives that focus on mental, physical, financial wellness, provide coaching to your employees, provide educational support, health and safety, just really looking more at the human side of your employment practices policies versus just the typical business side of things. So it's a shift in how we think. And we've seen clients who really do embrace these issues have overall higher amount of success of retention and overall business success. So moving into leadership, I really like this chart here. It kind of shows the progression of how leadership has changed over time. And really, post-pandemic, we're actually now post-pandemic, not even just today, but I'd like to highlight the word trust. You'll hear that come up for us a lot, that employees need to trust their employers and vice versa, right? You as entrepreneurs, you need to trust that the people that you're bringing on board are aligned and are going to be able to support the organization the way that you need them to, and vice versa. And employees really want to know that they have trust in their leaders. A lot of times we do engagement surveys for clients, and one of the questions is, do you trust the leaders of your organization? And that's a very key indicator to overall retention and business success, is if there's trust between the employees and the leaders of the organization. We just talked a little bit about wellness and kind of social responsibility of the focus individual, the community, the family. So being able to have policies like flexible workplace policies or work from home, a hybrid policy that really supports the understanding that people have lives outside of work, and maybe they want to travel, or maybe they want to volunteer, or they want to be involved in their children's schools or activities. Being able to be flexible with that is getting to be much more common, if not the norm, much more so than it used to be. So really thinking of leadership as being a part of a team, about all of us as a team working towards things together versus each of us having our own individual jobs, and really overall focusing on aligning the people in your organization, focusing on care, inspiring each other, being empathetic, and like I said, overall being flexible. So the importance of the recruiter, I think the key takeaway for the importance of the recruiter is that recruiting is a science. And I've come to believe this more and more as we've worked with clients where we have some amazing recruiters on our team who really do show that it is a science. And being able to have a creative and human-centered approach to your recruiting versus that I'm going to put out a job description, you're going to come to me and I'm going to make sure you have the skills that are needed, and then I'm going to offer you a job, and it's just a very highly transactional process. being able to elevate that to a proactive, personalized, and like I said, human-centered approach where you're really looking for alignment between the individual who's seeking a role and you as your organization, and making sure that that is an integrated kind of experience on both sides with some non-traditional practices. Strategically using tech, AI, and recruiting is a huge topic that our team's diving into right now. But really being able to identify your brand, articulate it, and then invest in that experience, almost like you're trying to court those folks to come in, and then ensure that there's alignment before you make an offer. And hopefully it's a mutually successful outcome, and you're able to attract folks that will be committed and want to stay with your organization. So overall, we say invest in recruiters because it is a science. It's not as easy as it sounds.
Well, and I would add here, Stacy, if I could, that
Sure.
it's an interesting time because I don't think this gets talked about a lot. I just want to stress it is important. And some of you may be working or starting startups or part of startups where hiring a recruiter may be a stretch. Either way, I think being thoughtful about the process that you source people from. Are you being diverse in where you're sourcing people from? And are you creating a process or a practice that really honors the individual, helps them understand your organization and where you're going and your values and vision, and then supporting them through the onboarding process is so key, so key. It's sort of like the first impression. You see somebody and you make an assessment of that person before you know them. It's the same sort of concept and has just become that much more important.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jill. So this is our one of our favorite slides that really, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And this is, really the coming together of, yes, every organization needs a strategy. Many of you have probably spent a ton of time on business plans and kind of defining your go-to-market strategy and all these things. And strategy is super important. Don't get me wrong. It's one of my favorite classes in grad school, but overall your culture, how your culture executes upon that strategy, how your culture defines your ways of working is going to eat that strategy for breakfast. If you don't have a culture that supports that, it's going to be very, very difficult to be successful. So in defining your culture, that's really gonna be what drives that strategy forward. Okay, I'm gonna throw it back to Jill here to talk about.
Okay, let's talk about taking what Stacy was talking about at a high level, those data points, and taking them down to practicality. So what do you need to do as a business owner or leader to address employees? So why do employees leave? Traditionally, in the past, it used to be employees would leave because their manager was not somebody they could connect with, respect, feel supported by, and that is still important. But today, we take it up a few notches, because really what we need as employees is to be recognized for the whole person. So you're going to see this theme throughout this presentation of the whole person being recognized, and what does that look like? And we'll get into that more in this slide, actually. So here, if you were to say, how do I recognize the whole person? I'd say, look at this slide and consider each one of these components. So do the employees have meaningful work? One thing is, how do you find out that you're meeting the need of the employee around this meaningful work? We'll talk about that more. But having employees participate in defining their work helps them in one aspect. Also, strong management. So as I mentioned before, the manager relationship is important, and it's not just about somebody who can be that respect relationship is there. But is the manager helping for the employee to be seen and heard throughout the organization? Do they help support and facilitate a voice? So how can that happen is something we'll dive into more as well. But having responsibilities defined, goals, having synergy around those conversations so that movement can happen, especially if you're a small organization, you want to be agile. So making sure that feedback and conversations are constantly happening so that the employee is feeling like they are seen and heard is so important. Positive workplace, that they feel good about the whole organization, they're appreciated, they have some flexibility. That's so important today. If you can't allow people to work remotely, it's a challenge because people want to work remotely at least some of the time. So what can you do to help honor that? Health and well-being, wellness, that's part of this whole person concept. So it's, you don't have to offer yoga classes during work, although that's awesome if you can. But just allowing people to have resources for their psychological aspects as well as their physical well-being, and making sure that they're being supported holistically, financially, as well as physically, and feel safe in their environment. Growth opportunity, those conversations around development, regardless of where you are on the growth spectrum as an organization, are important. We just met with our team today, and we're a team of just under 30 employees. And so there's not a whole lot of upward mobility that can happen on a continuous basis, but we still have those conversations regularly within our team on what are you seeking? What does that look like? How can I support you? This is what is true and real. And just having those open and honest communications. There could be opportunity for learning and development outside of your organization, that if it's aligned with where your organization is going, that makes a ton of sense. Trust is also a key piece. So do the employees feel like it goes back to feeling safe, but is there trust of the leadership? Is there transparency? Does the individual know where the organization is going? What do employees need? All of the things that we just mentioned. Meaningful work. They want to feel aligned with where the organization is going, which requires a level of transparency so they can see that. And we would argue that having a tool where those objectives and initiatives are seen by the individual and a connectedness to them is a key aspect of this that we hope to have time to get to. Positive feedback, autonomy, inclusivity and belonging. So I would argue DEI is having diverse employment opportunities is key, but ultimately it comes down to, do I feel part of this organization? Do I feel like I belong? Flexibility and trust. Thank you, Stacy. And what do you need from employees? So it goes both ways. This is not about you have to put employees on a pedestal and hope for the best. You can ask for accountability from individuals and ownership from your employees. It's a two-way street, and communication both ways has to happen. Clear understanding of what somebody owns is key. I always say, when you're looking at, if you do any reading about strategy and how to grow a business, one key aspect that comes up again and again is to make sure that there is ownership within a function or what that individual is owning, so that you can see from beginning to end. It's sort of like when you set goals, there's got to be measurement criteria. So what does an employee own? They need to be clear on what that is. They need to participate in what that looks like for them to then feel like, okay, I have my expectations. I know what that looks like, and I can be held accountable. So leaders can't force employees to be responsible. It's got to be a process that they participate in. So defining those expectations, revisiting the progress will take you a long way in this accountability conversation and concept. A strong culture will motivate employees to fulfill their commitments because ideally they're going to feel connected to your culture and where your organization's going. Employees who feel honored by their managers are more likely to want to come through. People who feel neglected aren't so motivated. So we're going to talk a little bit later on, how do you manage remote teams? Because that aspect of if somebody's working remotely and they're totally detached, do you know what they're doing? How do you hold them accountable and how do you keep them motivated is something that we're going to get to. So promoting accountability. Employees define what they're accountable for, so they participate in what that looks like. Ideally, you have cascading goals throughout the organization. So it's that tiered effect. What are we trying to accomplish as an organization? What are we trying to accomplish as a department? What are we trying to accomplish as an individual? And that should go back and forth so that everybody can see what we own and what our objectives are. And then regular communication needs to happen, incorporate growth and development conversations, ideally in that picture, and then celebrate success. Appreciate your staff, honor your staff. You don't have to buy a software to do that, but make sure that when they're doing a great job, they know they're doing a great job. Stacy, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Jill. So we're going to take a quick break from all of the kind of philosophical and the leadership type of items and talk a little bit about HR technology. So HR technology is, I wish I had the figures, but it's some massive amount of kind of the growth area of HR. There are so many technologies out there, and there are so many different ways to integrate the various technologies and to utilize them in your day-to-day operations to make your processes more efficient, make the employee experience better. There are so many technologies available. This is just the short list. There is a much longer list than this, but these are the basic kind of high-level tools that we see clients either currently utilizing or asking us whether or not they should utilize these. And the answer that when clients say, what technology do I need? The answer that we usually give back is, well, it depends. It depends on what you're trying to do. It depends on your budget. It depends on your growth plans. It depends on, what overall are you trying to achieve? So our team will go in and kind of do an assessment, excuse me, of your current systems and make recommendations for any additional systems. But one thing that we say, and you'll see it later on, is that the tools are great. It's great to have any kind of technology, but if there isn't a process associated with that tool and a reason why that tool exists and an understanding on the user side as to why they need to be utilizing this tool, then you're going to be challenged to get people to participate in that process and actually lean into that technology. So especially from the startup, the entrepreneurial space, we often hear, where do I start? So we generally say you have some must-haves. You generally need a payroll processor. We do come across clients that are processing payroll on their own through QuickBooks or have a CPA doing that. We highly recommend there's some very inexpensive options leaning into just a payroll vendor that will take care of all of those the tax remittance and all of that on your behalf. And then there's just a trust that the employees expect that all your taxes are being taken care of. And so by utilizing one of those vendors that is a payroll bureau, that's definitely a recommendation that we can give, and we would always be willing to help set up. We set up clients on payroll vendors almost daily these days. And an HRMS, so that's just a space where you can manage kind of a single source of truth for all of your HR data. and then manage compliance. So there are a lot of different rules in every different state. There are more rules. There are local rules, state and federal rules that need to be followed. So by leaning into a system, there are some compliance support tools that our team can help direct you towards. So those are probably the must-haves. Then I would use, what are your organizational objectives to drive your next phase? So we don't want too many tech tools. People get easily overwhelmed, even though we all are leaning into technology these days. Like I said, if there isn't a reason as to why it's there and it's going to make our lives easier, then you probably don't need it. So our survey results show that the most useful tech tools are ones that facilitate listening and analytics. So what data can you get out of the tool? Again, what is the process? How does this facilitate us as an organization understanding more about something? So we'll talk a little bit about the like a performance tool and how we utilize that, the tool that we have in that space. And then a great employee experience program includes a program of integrated platform for listening, feedback, and response. So there are, again, a lot of different tools out there, but really making sure that whatever your employee experience, the technology associated with that it's a two-way street. You want it to be an opportunity for employees to involve their feedback and then a way that you as the leaders can listen and soak in that feedback and then respond to it accordingly. So it really does need to be a two-way platform, not just simply the old school kind of intranet environment that used to be in place where it was just a company sharing information. It really needs to be a feedback tool as well. And so we say process plus tool equals success. So as long as you have a process in place and you've got the right tool chosen and implemented, we've seen HR tech be a very, very successful way for businesses to grow and become efficient. Okay. Back to Jill.
So this next section, we have 10 minutes left. So I'm gonna combine, I think, our last two sections into one here. This next section, we're gonna talk about remote and hybrid teams and how do you keep employees engaged. This topic really falls under the performance HR aspect. And we recommend a performance tool. We actually recommend our performance tool, but a performance tool that has these key components are important. So whether you implement a tool or you just look at this process and you're looking at different tools, these aspects should be included in it. And so you want this whole thing about how do you keep employees, it's around keeping them engaged. How do you keep them engaged? They have to be connected. There has to be transparency. They need to know what they own and their participation in it. So not only do they need to be clear on their responsibilities and participate in defining those responsibilities, but ideally they're also creating some stretch goals and helping to defining what those goals look like, but also what the measurements look like in terms of defining that goal. I'll talk about that a little bit more. But they need to understand and participate in all of this definition. Obviously, you're going to have your manager sign off on what the employee is defining, but there needs to be this aspect of ownership, and it can't happen without their participation. So if you just hire somebody, you hand them a job description and say, go, you're missing that ownership component. Okay, next slide. Leaders should know what their employees are thinking and feeling. So you're hearing a theme here about make sure they're seen and heard and the whole person is honored. How your employees are performing against expectations and the roadmap forward. So if the employee is defining their measurement criteria and you're visually seeing that measurement criteria, you can be clear on how are they meeting expectations. And honestly, we love to see that get to the behavioral level where managers are talking about behavior and empowered to talk about behavior. and feel comfortable talking about behavior because you created a safe environment for those discussions. Employees should also, Employees should also have their strengths and weaknesses noted, honored, seen, same concept. And ideally your managers are coaches rather than just managers. They don't need to be called coaches. You could call them coaches, but the role of a manager as a coach is the ideal. As I mentioned, this aspect of set clear expectations, participation in that, tie behaviors to your core values. So when I was talking about behavior and empowering your manager, ideally, you have defined as an organization, if you're in startup mode, you define who you are in terms of your core values. And then if you want to make those sticky, which would be the ideal, you want to tie those to behaviors that employees are engaging in. And that is one way to create that connectedness between the core values of the organization and the individual behavior. Our tool does that really gracefully. So I think that's a unique component. Not easy to do. Align goals throughout. Already talked about this. This is this aspect of the tiered component of, as you should be able to see a dashboard. What does the company need to accomplish? What is the divisions, departments, down to the individual and back up again. And then ideally, you're creating a continuous feedback culture. So people need information in order to course correct. If they're not getting the feedback, they don't know where change needs to occur. This is where a performance tool that is annual and looks back at the last year's success or not is very, very difficult. And breaks down frequently, and employees don't want to do it and managers don't want to do it because you're setting up a process that really doesn't work. So you've got to set up a continuous feedback loop that happens on an ongoing basis. Ideally once a month or every 2 months, you're having those conversations that are beyond the day-to-day or what we're doing this week. And you can grab feedback from various levels, including your customers. 360 is an ideal way to get feedback, to get that feedback dispersed amongst your organization back to the individual, but you got to make sure you do that in a way that people know what that employee owns. That's where 360s break down, is if you have a 360 and somebody who's doing that evaluation has no idea what the employee really is responsible for, it's tough to do that well. Next slide. And then don't forget growth. So this aspect of development, employees want an opportunity in many cases to progress. We do have some employees on our team that are fine where they're at, but majority are going to want to know how they can be stimulated, learn, grow, and develop. And so whether you have a lot of successful ways to do that within your organization, you still want to have the conversations, because it's going to need to get addressed as part of that holistic employee aspect. And ideally, if somebody's not a good fit because they want something else, and they can't find it within your organization, you want to support them and help them exit gracefully. So maybe they'll refer somebody to you next time. And then I love this slide, jump up and down and say woohoo when they do well. We have a little icon where we jump up and throw confetti when somebody's moving ahead. And so it's a opportunity to be seen. Again, is if you can give praise, ideally praise that can be seen by others, but even if it's just between the manager and the employee, you want to give that feedback. Stacy, in the last 4 minutes.
Okay. So the old way of performance management, we like to call it performance enablement, but performance management is, the top-down manager calls in an employee, gives a bunch of feedback. The employee is expected to just kind of sit there and take it, and then they leave feeling discouraged, right? Like makes us both want to jump off the side of a building. So we do not endorse or promote this in any way. Everything that Jill's been talking about around engaging in conversation and building trust is super important in the way that we advise our clients, and we've seen it work. I think that's an important point, is we've seen it work time and time again for the past 15 years, 20 years in our careers. We've seen that this type of environment is much more conducive to employee growth. So when you're looking for a tool, I'll just kind of shamelessly plug our tool here. We've done that a few times here, but we just really believe that it should support employee enthusiasm, should give a framework for coaching for maybe new managers or people who aren't super comfortable in the coaching space just yet. Make sure that it's aligned to the overall strategy, promotes regular conversations, not just once a year, timely conversations that allow for course correction. So have the conversation quarterly or every other month, so that if we do need to pivot, which we always need to pivot in some way, that course correction can happen before it's too late, before either the employee or the leader feels like that there hasn't been success. So our tool is called BPM Link. It really is built by HR leaders, developed by us. We've got a great tech team, but it really is intended to be easy to use, simple, supports those conversations, documents those conversations. It enables the employee to define their own responsibilities and goals. Then the supervisor comes in and has those, provides feedback, has the regular conversations, and then it's just a collaborative, overall collaborative environment. Easy to use. We integrate with other platforms, but it really is just a simple way to execute this process in a way that is progressive and employee driven, and very thoughtful about allowing employees to participate in their own destiny. And then aligning the link in BPM Link, and you can kind of see on this screen here, is the overall foundational information. What are your values? What are your how do you define your culture? What core behaviors are really important for you to see? And then allows employees to participate and be a part of that process. So we love our tool. Happy to share it with anyone who's looking to implement something like this. At the startup phase is the best time to do it, because then it can grow with you as your organization grows. I know we have some questions, which is exciting because we love questions. So it looks like we have 2 questions.
So I just answered one. The first one I tried to answer and I ended up clicking on doing it live. But let me just answer really quickly. In terms of the mentoring, absolutely, mentoring is an awesome way to support employees. I'm not quite clear what you mean by mentoring at scale, but I assume that's through making that a process through your organization. We have that at BPM, where we provide a buddy and a coach to help additional ways to be seen and heard for employees to have a voice, is to have multiple people involved and to feel supported by those that are at in a position to mentor. So yes, absolutely. And then the other question of, can you really create this environment where trust is evolved for leadership? 100%, I believe you can. I think open-ended questions, having these feedback loops where giving an opportunity for the employee to be seen either with a tool and having those questions asked through the tool, or just in a process that you create. It's harder when you don't have a tool, honestly, and I'm not saying that just to pump up our tool, but it really does help if the employees like it and want to participate in it and use it. I guess I'll pause there. We are at time.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you, Sue, so much. And what an awesome presentation. A lot of great details and insights in there. So I think we have a couple questions here, just kind of like related to like how to balance like these kind of like tracking performance and like setting expectations without like micromanaging, or just kind of, the balance between kind of that autonomy for the employee versus like kind of having them feel like they're always being watched.
Stacy,
Yeah,
you
I
want to take
think-
that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it really comes down, all this for me comes down to trust, right? Like even the question about mentoring at scale, or is this really possible? It really is about building trust. And the best way to build trust is to do what you say you're going to do, right?
Mhm.
So if you say that, it's important to us as an organization that we allow for growth with our employees, or whatever you decide, you're willing to support, that if you say it, you should be willing to do it, because over time, the more you say what you say you're going to do, the more trust the employees are going to have. So like the question around, can you get real listening? Well, yes, because to Jill's point, if you have open-ended questions, you allow the opportunity for employees to respond to those questions with their own thoughts, and then you consider, the next really important step is to consider those thoughts in any actions that you may take as a leader. And even if you don't, you loop back and you say, I really appreciated your feedback. Here's what we've done next. Here's what we've considered. Maybe we can't execute this at this time, but here's what we plan to do in the future. Just be honest. And I think by being honest and again, doing what you're committed to, you'll grow trust over time. And so that feeling of being micromanaged slowly starts to dissipate if people feel like that they're going to be receiving regular and ongoing feedback. Tends to be more of a like feedback is a gift versus I'm being micromanaged. And if everybody's working towards the same outcome and the same goal, and that's truly felt and trusted, then things get to be a lot easier. So yeah, I mean, in general, that's what I would say about that. I don't know if you had any thoughts, Jill, on that.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. There's also a question around how often should managers meet with their employees. I would argue once a month is ideal. If not once a month, at least once a quarter at minimum. So somewhere between once a month and once a quarter.
Yeah, and I think that to piggyback on that, Jill, the difference between a check-in, a quick one-on-one check-in,
yeah,
and then having a more in-depth meeting that maybe might cover all of the areas like your job responsibilities and goals you've set, and alignment with values and behaviors. Maybe those meetings are happening, like Jill said, every other month or minimum
Right.
Quarterly is generally what we like. But regular check-ins, I mean, just quick check-ins, quick 10-minute check-ins. Studies show that doing that as often as once a week is really effective.
Love it. Awesome. Well, this has been so great, and we are just about to be out of time, but I would love to hear, if each of you just had a piece of wisdom or a key takeaway from this conversation that you wanted to leave with the audience. So I'll start with you, Stacy.
Ooh, a key takeaway. I would say probably, think out of the box and be open. Don't be afraid as a leader that you have to manage everything. Lean into the skills of your team. Lean into the people who you've entrusted to be a part of your team, and let them help you. Let them participate with you.
Amazing. And Jill?
So I would leave the audience with the concept of engagement with performance tool that employees want to use, which leads to empowerment, which leads to engagement. So it stems with, if the employees don't want to use it, they're not going to use it. Your process is not going to work.
Right. Awesome. Well, Jill, Stacy, thank you both so much for joining us once again on the stage. It's always such a pleasure. And on behalf of the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and everyone here today, we're just super thankful that you both joined us today.
Thanks for having us. Always fun.
Thank you.
Awesome. And to our audience, we would love for you to join us again for upcoming webinars, which you can view using that link that's going to be posted in the chat. And thank you all so much for joining us today. We look forward to welcoming you back online with us soon.